Hey, Sherlock Holmes, a reading from Anisha the Accidental Detective by Serena Patel and Detective Games and Activities. Today's video is based on Sherlock Holmes, the fictional detective created by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. He's probably the most famous detective ever, and he's so popular that he's actually appeared in 236 films, more than any other character, beaten only by Dracula, who's not even human. The first film version was a silent film because it was made way back in 1900. Sherlock specialises in solving unusual cases using his very astute powers of deduction, while he also studies to become an eye doctor. And the character was based on Conan Doyle's own teacher when he was at Edinburgh University studying medicine. His teacher, Joseph Bell, was really, really observant, could often tell what was wrong with his patients just by looking at what they were wearing or their stance or observing peculiar things. He was so good at this that he often helped the police with their cases. Sherlock's sidekick is, of course, Watson. Elementary, my dear Watson, is his catchphrase, and Dr. Watson's actual first name is John. Watson is a retired army officer. Sherlock lives famously at the address 221B Baker Street, which doesn't actually exist, but there is a museum today at 239 Baker Street. Many tourists flock there, and there's a monument to him erected now as well. And there's also one in Edinburgh too. Contrary to popular belief, Sherlock Holmes never actually wore a deerstalker hat in the books. And he doesn't actually say elementary, my dear Watson, either. But he did often say elementary and my dear Watson, but never the two together. Sherlock is a master of disguise and he can play the violin, although he doesn't know much about politics, literature or astronomy. Those are his weak points, and he famously smokes a pipe. The first Sherlock story was actually published in a magazine and it didn't receive much attention at all. So today, there's only about 11 known copies in a good condition still in existence, and one sold for $150,000 at an auction in 2007. Sherlock has many fans, and one person that loved his stories was Queen Victoria. In the story The Bruce Partington Plans, he actually gets invited to Windsor to meet her in recognition of his services and is presented with an emerald tie-pin. Moriarty is the arch enemy of Sherlock Holmes, and he's a mathematical genius and a crime mastermind. Sherlock often speaks of his genius in admiration, even though they're enemies. Other characters include Mrs. Hudson, Sherlock's landlady, who's very, very fond of Sherlock. Sherlock's brother makes an appearance in two stories, Mycroft Holmes, and he has brilliant powers of deduction as well. He works for the government. His role is often bigger in TV shows, but he only made it into two of the original stories. So there you have it, everything you need to know in a nutshell about the world's most famous detective, Sherlock Holmes. Now, Sherlock Holmes is obviously an old school detective. Today's story features a modern day detective. She's only a schoolgirl, but yet she manages to piece clues together to solve crimes. She's actually an accidental detective. So let's hear from Anisha the Accidental Detective by Serena Patel. Chapter 3. How not to catch a lobster. Milo and I scramble up the steps into the house and stumble into the living room, looking for whoever or whatever could be making that awful noise. Auntie Suki, my mum's other sister, comes running towards us from the kitchen, waving a mop and screeching at the top of her voice, "Lobster!" Auntie Bindi shrieks and totters on her tiptoes. She's standing on the sofa in her pink spotty dressing gown. She's got big fat rollers in her hair and some kind of bright green goo face mask on. She's obviously getting ready for the nose mendie later. "What is going on?" I shout over the noise. "There's a lobster on the loose." They both squeal at the same time. I notice Uncle Ricky has arrived and is lurking by the entrance to the marquee. Granny Jazz is making lobster curry later. I don't think the lobster likes that idea, he remarks, not looking up from his phone. "No need to panic," says Mum, in her sing-song, just keep calm voice as she comes downstairs. "It's probably more frightened of you than you are of it." "I am not panicking," Dad huffs, dashing downstairs behind her. Just someone, for goodness sake, get it. He grabs the mop from Suki and thrusts it towards me. Here, Annie, you're strong. You can bash it with the mop. I don't want it, I say, pushing the mop back towards Dad. And I am not bashing a lobster. Let me get to it, Milo pleads through the commotion. I can talk it round. Oh, Bhagavan. The word Granny uses the most in our house is Bhagavan. She says it when things go wrong, when she can't get up out of the comfy armchair, when her knees are hurting, and when Auntie Bindi is annoying everyone, which is quite often. If you don't know or haven't already guessed, it means, oh God. Just pass me the mop, orders Granny Jazz. Honestly, I have never known such a fuss. How do you think they are getting their food in the villagers back home? If you ever meet my Granny Jazz, you'll see she is tiny but fierce. No one knows exactly how old she is. She has long grey hair, always tied back in a plait, and she wears a sari every day, pleated to perfection. She is the wrinkliest old person I know, but still as quick as a fox. She leaps past me, with her arm outstretched for the mop. Milo blocks the door to the kitchen. Maybe I should try to talk to the lobster. Your mum's right. He's probably more scared than all of you. You are trying to cook him, remember? Granny harumphs, but thankfully doesn't go into the kitchen to bash the lobster. I follow Milo as he slowly backs away in the direction of the intrepid invertebrate. I've been watching too much David Attenborough with him. He whispers to me, did you know that lobsters have 10 legs? Imagine if humans had 10 legs. How fast we could get to school. I think we should concentrate on how fast the lobster is getting away, I reply. Well, I read that some lobsters live to be 100. If they don't get cooked by your granny, that is. Maybe he deserves to get away, Milo remarks, pushing his hand against the kitchen door. As Milo slowly walks through the doorway, I see it. The lobster is about as long as I am from my head to my waist. He's a dark browny green colour with little specks of electric blue dotted along his back. And he's scuttling across the floor towards the back door, making a run for it. Claws click-clacking as he goes. I just know this is not going to go well. Careful now, Milo murmurs. You have to approach from behind or he could get you with his claw. Also, I saw a documentary once that showed how lobsters wee out of their faces. So maybe stay back? Milo inches round until he's behind the lobster, then lurches forward with his hands outstretched. Not seeing the mop bucket in front of him, he trips, landing face first. I make a leap to save Milo as he's falling, but the floor is slippery, my feet skid, and my legs flail as I lose my balance and hit the tiles with a thud, which is just as painful as it sounds. When I look up, I see the evil twins are standing there, smirking at me. Where did they come from? What are you looking at? I say, annoyed. Never seen someone fall over before? Not quite so spectacularly, Manny laughs, holding his tummy. So irresponsible, letting a lobster wander around like that. How did it escape? We could get Bella to catch it if you need some help, suggests Mindy menacingly. I think we can manage, I say, looking up at Mindy and her vampire dog. Bella's letting out a low growl and baring her pointy teeth, so we'd better do something fast. I'm not a fan of this lobster, but even I don't want to see him end up as dog food. Quick, grab him, I shout to Milo, rushing to my feet and making a final dive for the lobster before it disappears out the door. But just as I do, the lobster faces me. Everything slows down. I'm mid-air and he's looking straight at me over his enormous pincers. I could be imagining it, but I swear he just grins at me. Then he does the most disgusting thing. Yes, you guessed it. He does a wee right at me. Ugh! Chapter 4, The Call. When we emerge from the kitchen, me gently dripping and Milo clutching the lobster, Auntie Bindi, still in her dressing gown and rollers, sort of flops face down in despair onto the sofa, leaving an inky green stain on Mum's favourite cream velvet cushion. Mum calmly goes upstairs to steam the creases out of her outfit for tomorrow. Dad goes off to his study, asking no one in particular why things are never straightforward around here. As usual, no one answers him, and I suddenly realise nobody is in the least bit bothered that I have lobster wee all over me. As I look round for a towel, or even better, an antibacterial wipe, I see Uncle Ricky slithering off into the marquee while staring intently at his phone. The twins have skulked off somewhere too. Granny Jazz marches up and down, muttering in a mixture of Hindi and English and tapping her head. I just know there are some bad words in there. She mentions something about the greenhouse and saunters off, her white and lemon-coloured sari billowing in the breeze. She's always in the greenhouse these days. I can't imagine what's so interesting about her hyacinths and herbs. Granny Jazz is my dad's mum, and she's always lived with us. Granny has no teeth, none at all. That would be gross on anyone else, but it's quite funny on Granny. She wears dentures when she remembers to, but sometimes she leaves them in odd places, like the time she left them on the side table in the living room. And when the telephone rang, Mum picked them up by accident. When I was younger and had particularly tricky school projects, Mum would tell Dad to help me. Dad would say, "Why don't you do it with Granny Jazz? She'd enjoy that." Only because he didn't have a clue either. One time we had to make a papier-mâché planet. The instructions said you needed plain flour and water. We didn't have any plain flour, but Granny Jazz said chapati flour would be fine. Same thing, she announced gleefully. I can tell you it was not the same thing, and the result was crusty and crumpled. I was so embarrassed, but it was too late to start again, so I had to take the chapati planet in. I tried to pass it off as moonrock, but everyone laughed, and my teacher, Mr. Stern, was not happy at all. He thought I had done it as a joke, so I got a letter home. Mum told off Dad, and Dad told off Granny Jazz. Granny reminded Dad that she is his mum, and she would stop cooking for him if he said anything else. Right now, guests are arriving, and Auntie Suki ushers them into the marquee. It fills up really quickly, and soon the guests are spilling out onto the garden. Auntie Bindi disappears to get ready upstairs. No way will she let anyone see her with rollers and a green face. Milo sits behind the sofa, whispering to the lobster. After I splash water all over my face and scrub it raw with a fannel, then spray myself with some eau de pure from Mum's bathroom shelf, I go over and sit with him.
I hope you're not making friends with him, Milo, I say in my best mum voice.
He says his name's Larry, Milo smiles, stroking the lobster's hard, shiny shell. The lobster seems to like it. No, Milo. Granny Jazz is cooking him later. Remember, lobster curry, I insist. She can't. I won't let her, exclaims Milo, putting his arms protectively over the lobster. He tilts his head to the side as if listening. He doesn't think it's fair that your dad wants to eat him. He says your dad should explore veganism. I'm about to argue with Milo that the lobster couldn't possibly have said that. Because, well, he's a lobster. But then the phone rings. There's no one else in the living room now, so I jump up and answer it, hoping it's not a relative who wants to talk to me in Hindi. Why has the wedding not been cancelled as we instructed? The voice is muffled, like the person is talking through a thick scarf. It gives me the creeps. Who is this, I demand. You don't need to know that. I strain to hear if there are any clues as to where the caller could be. There's a low humming and lots of background noise, like the person is in a crowded place. I think I hear music tinkling. Just make sure the wedding is cancelled by 7 o'clock this evening. Where's Tony? How do I know you haven't thrown him over a cliff or hurt him? You don't. Cancel the wedding, or else. And the line goes dead. I hang up, my brain whirring. There was something strange about the phone call, apart from the obvious thing of it being from a kidnapper. Who was that? Your face has gone all weird, says Milo. I look round, paranoid someone could be listening. It was the kidnapper. They said the wedding has to be cancelled by 7 this evening. It's already 3 minutes and 23 seconds past 1 now, I whisper. And then... Can you hear that? I ask Milo. Hear what? Tell me more about what they said on the phone. I ignore Milo's question and head into the kitchen. The back door is open and I step out into the garden, closely followed by Milo, who's holding the lobster. To the left of us, the back of the house juts out and the marquee attached to it fills up most of the space. Somewhere past it, I hear the sound again. I look down to the far end of the garden, at the row of tall trees, which Milo quite often tries to climb. He says it makes him feel in touch with nature. Except for that one time when he disturbed a wasp's nest by accident. Wasps are not that friendly when they think you're attacking them, apparently. The rest of the garden is full of people chattering and laughing. I walk past the marquee and down onto the grass, listening for music. There it is again. Tinkling music. It's coming from the front of the house now. How is it moving around so much? I run quickly to the side gate and flip the latch to open it. Milo follows me into the alley and then out to the front of our house. just as an ice cream van goes chiming past. "That's the exact music I heard in the background of the call from the kidnapper," I gasp. We both turn and look back at my house, and then at each other. "Does that mean," begins Milo, "the phone call must have come from inside the house?" But nowadays, there are still modern detectives and private eyes that are in operation. People can hire someone to investigate something if they need to get to the bottom of a mystery. Sometimes, if there are kidnappings, there are things called ransom notes. Now, I don't know if you've ever seen in a film, but obviously people need to disguise their writing when they write a ransom note. And so what they do is they cut out letters from newspapers, and that is what I thought it might be fun to do today. We're not going to make a ransom note, obviously, because we're not kidnapping anyone, but it might be nice to make a sign of your name for your room, or you could do a cryptic message to send to someone and then write clues underneath so they can guess who it's from. I am going to write "You are a winner," and you'll see why after I finished making my note, but they look really, really cool. What you need to do to kick off is get your hands on a pile of old leaflets and magazines and stuff, so that you can get your scissors out and start cutting through them all to get the letters you need. You'll also need a piece of paper to stick your message or your name on, and then some scissors and some glue or sticky tape. Now I'm using sticky tape because I think it looks quite cool on one of these ransom note style signs because it gives a shiny effect. And the more colourful the letters, the better, because that also makes it look really cool. For instance, this E is a nice pink and yellow colour. If you can't get your hands on any newspapers or magazines, then a really good way to get lettering is off old packaging, like a cereal box or carton. They have big letters in. Right, so I'm now going to get searching through my magazine and start cutting out a load of letters. All right, so I'm just cutting out my last letter, and then I am ready. There we are. The letter E, to put it in place, and I have finished. I shall show you of writing my message, and there you can see it says "You are a winner," and it looks pretty cool. I'm going to stick it now with sticky tape. Like I said before, sticky tape gives a little bit of a shine to our note, and so I think that looks really, really cool. Okay, so I'm just sticking down my last letter, and then you can see I'm done. "You are a winner" is a really, really good thing for people to search for if you're playing the game Detective Hunt. So to play, whoever's setting the game needs to hide the first clue, for instance, a Lego brick, for whoever's playing to find. So then they think, the Lego box. So then they go to the Lego box, and then they find something unusual, like a fork, for instance. And then they think, a fork. This must be the cutlery drawer. And so then you hide another clue in the cutlery drawer, like, for instance, a cuddly toy. And so then they might think, that's usually in my bed. So then they go and look in their bed. In their bed, there might be a leaf. So they think, out in the garden. And then in the garden, you might put another sign that says under the flower pot. And they find "You are a winner." And they've followed the clues successfully and been good detectives. Another really cool detective game to play would be Guess the Thing. You could get a cardboard box and put loads and loads of different things inside, then cut 2 holes in the top of the box, and then people have to put their arms through and feel what's inside. So put lots of objects that feel different from each other, like, for instance, a Lego man, or a fork and a cuddly toy, if I'm using the same examples as the last game. And you have to list down as many things as you can recognise. You can also play the detective game using sense of smell. So blindfold whoever is going to be your detective, and then see how many things they can sniff correctly, like chocolate, lemon, hand cream, soap, mint, toothpaste, things that have different scents. So that's it for today's video. I hope you have enjoyed playing detective and hearing about Sherlock and the story and everything. Please spread the word and subscribe, and see you later. Bye.